good morning, Mickey, or good, I guess, afternoon. I'm supposing if you're still in Israel, is that
It's
afternoon?
already an evening, yeah.
Oh, it's evening. Well, thank you again for doing this. It's wonderful to have you on. It's always great to talk to you, and uh, maybe save the background. I think we've had you on before. I wanted to. Yeah, there's a couple papers that have got your name on it. This can recently come out. One talking about trophic levels of humans, and one talking about Homo sapien evolution. And so, these
Right.
are very interesting topics, and I think I want to kind of get into those. First of all, how have you been doing, by the way? How are things going for you?
Pretty well, pretty well. Yeah, I mean, it's every paper is like a baby that get born. It's a result of one of them is like 10 years of work, and the other one is also 10 years of work. So yeah, so it's I'm feeling great.
Well,
Yeah.
let me just and let me see if I mean, guess maybe we start with the one about the trophic level of humans. And I just read the abstract. I haven't been able to access the whole article. I haven't had a chance to look at that. But
Right, we discussed it a little bit, not a little bit, we discussed it quite a lot last time.
yeah, so we
Uh,
talk about so the
we talked about more about the biological side of it, with
okay.
acidity and all that stuff.
Right, stomach acid development of that. But
Yeah,
you talked about, I guess you're saying that according to the article, humans sort of peaked as carnivores as Homo erectus,
right.
and then we've seen this slow sort of decline, if you will, or change in the diet as we got into agriculture.
Yeah, the
Can
change,
you talk about
the
that?
real change in the diet was, in my opinion, just about. I mean, it sounds maybe a lot to other people, but to me, it sounds it's the last 1% of the period of the Stone Age. It's during the last 1% of the Stone Age. That's what it is. Like 20,000 years ago, or 20,000 years before the end of the Stone Age. So, and the Stone Age lasted actually for more than 2 million years. So it's just the last 1%. Humans began to consume more plants.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was basically out of necessity, I think, is what we conclude. But let's walk us through from the beginning, Mickey. So, the Stone Age starts 2 million years ago. How did humans acquire the trophic level of what you would argue
Okay.
is early carnivorous?
Okay. One thing that is really sometimes missing, and this is also connected to the other paper, uh, from explanations of paleoanthropologists about evolution, is really uh, the the template of evolution is very simple. There is a ecological change that bring adaptation, because there is a variety. Okay, not all the people have all the everything, all the genes. Okay, so there is a selecting agent that selects the people who are more adapted to that environment, that new environment. Okay, and these people, because they are have better adaptation, produce more babies. Okay, so and then their characteristics or the genes getting transferred. So in this story, paleoanthropologists for some reason forget the ecology, and not all of them and not all the time. So at the beginning, the initial explanation, they did not forget about the ecology. The initial explanation, we start, the human evolution starts with Homo habilis, okay? Although some people say that maybe he's not a Homo yet, but he's certainly close to a Homo. So the environmental change that brought about Homo habilis, I think there is quite an agreement about that, is the appearance of savanna and more savanna in the forest, more savanna areas. And so the plants that they used to consume beforehand, I'm talking about Australopithecus, about the apes, human or hominins. They consume plants mainly. So Homo habilis had to adjust and found in the environment things that he could approach with stones, that he cut a little bit, he did something to the stones that made them more useful. And because the hands were free, he could break bones and break skulls and get the brain and get the marrow. Okay, and then even he already started to consume flesh. So here in this explanation, the environment is there. Then the next species is Homo erectus. And Homo erectus was the most successful human species. It lasted for about 1.5 million years. And his appearance is associated with increased savanna areas. So really, you don't have many plants. Savanna is typified by the fact that the biomass of animals is much higher than in forests. And the plant biomass is less than in forests. So really you have to, I mean, that's what people did. People adapted to savannas. And here, there's no real argument about it, but for some reason, and I think the reason is that people just don't know, they say, oh, well, they consumed everything. Humans were so smart that they could consume everything. And my feeling is that this is not the right hypothesis. And actually, people specialized in obtaining animals. This was their answer to the ecological change. And the paper that we're discussing, the trophic level paper, actually goes one by one over about 25 different types of evidence from biology, from archaeology, from zoology, from paleontology, that show that Homo erectus actually was a fully fledged carnivore. Now he was, by analogy to present carnivores, he was a large carnivore. I mean, at 66 kilogram, yeah? 66 kilogram is a large, there are larger carnivores, but 66 kilogram is a large carnivore. Not only that, but he is a social carnivore. So there is direct relationship. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up that article, Mickey, that you got.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So you guys can
all of a sudden, the computer screen changed.
Yeah.
So there is a direct relationship between the size, the biomass of the group, carnivore group, and the biomass of the prey. Okay? And all the social carnivores, large carnivores that you can think of, all of them are hypercarnivores. So it's not something that you just do in an afternoon, like, go and do a little hunting. You have to, and all of them, by the way, get better with time, with age. So they take a lot of time. They also need to learn. They take a lot of experience to become proficient in what they do. I'm talking about lions. I'm talking about wolves, yeah, large carnivores. They have to learn. It's not something that you can do like a hobby. And so if you take that analogy, you see that humans just had to, they just had to be hypercarnivores. Smaller carnivores specialize in smaller prey. There's some energetic reason for that. So large carnivore specialize in large prey. They also get smaller prey from time to time. But if you see how much biomass was supplied by the larger prey, you will see that it's like 80% of their biomass that they consumed actually came from large prey. Although in numbers, you see, for instance, you take lions in Kruger Park, most of the prey that they take by numbers is deer, is like, well, I forgot the name, but anyway, a deer, type of deer, which weighs about 80 kilo or something like that. But most of the biomass they get are from buffalo. Yeah? So the same must have been with humans. Yes, you find, and by the way, this is another paper that should come out any day. When you go to archaeological sites, you find many bones of smaller animals and fewer bones of larger animals. And so that's why I think people, I'm talking about paleoanthropologists, didn't appreciate the importance of the large prey for humans. Because now, human is a very special carnivore in the sense that it brings its prey into a central site and consume it there. Most carnivores just, when they manage to hunt something, some prey, they jump on it and they try to consume as much as possible, as quick as possible before other animals come, right? You can see it. Everybody who watches National Geographic knows these pictures. Humans are different. They don't stay there and wait for other animals to come. They just cut the parts that they want and they go to a central place where they can protect their prey sometimes for weeks. Yeah. So in this central place, you find many bones of smaller animals and fewer bones of larger animals. Now, this just only makes sense. First of all, like I told you in the lions in Kruger Park, they hunt fewer large animals, but the biomass is bigger, yeah? is the majority, from the majority of their food. But the number of animals is lower. Also, the bones are heavy. Like, just imagine you have to move an elephant, yeah, to a central place. I mean, this is crazy. So I did another paper where I compared the Hadza. Hadza actually have the same thing, although you find every paleoanthropologist tell you that the Hadza they consume everything and every animal and every plant in their environment. When I did the calculation, the 57% of their meat came from the giraffe. And there are like 11 giraffes. At the same time, they hunted 80 impalas that actually formed only 5% of their meat. So in the central place of the Hadza, you find many bones of impala and few bones of giraffe, because like for some of the giraffes, they didn't bring any bone. They just took the fat. And you should see, look at how much fat a giraffe has when you open it, when you open the skin. They took the fat, they took the meat, and they left the bones of it at the kill site. So the end of the story is that there are many evidence that Homo erectus, who was very large. By the way, this is one of the difference between Homo habilis and Homo erectus is the weight, body weight. Homo erectus, or height, let's take height. Homo habilis was like 110, 120 meter. I'm talking about 1 meter 20. You make the calculation in feet. It's what about the third? No, 3
Yeah,
feet?
about a little about 3.5 feet.
No,
tall.
4 feet. 4
Yeah,
feet.
3.5, 4 foot tall. Yeah.
Homo erectus is our height. He has the same height as we do. And this growth in the body is the ultimate proof of him becoming a carnivore, because you don't need large body to collect plants, but you need large body to face prey. Okay, so this is one of the evidence. So this is about Homo erectus. I don't know if you wanted to go through the more evidence about that, but I'd rather then go to the other paper, because we did quite a lot on that paper. In any event, what you see later, now this is quite later, you see Homo sapiens, and he is more agile, he has longer legs, he is more athletic, sort of. And the interpretation of that is that he has to deal with smaller animals that actually escape. And this is a big difference between large animals and small animals. I'm talking large, I'm talking about elephants, rhinos, hippos. They just don't run away. I mean, when you go and face them, they'll either charge or they just stand there. Unless you come with a group and then you're conceived as a larger animal, they just don't run away. So it's not a big problem to get them. You just dig a hole in the ground, wait until they pass, and you cover the hole with some leaves and branches, and you know that the elephants go every day the same route to the lake to get water. They have to drink. And one of them fall, and that's it. You need like thrusting spears made of wood, and you can kill them. So it's not a big deal to see them. It's not a big deal to locate them, and it's not a big deal to get them. So, but when they start to disappear, probably because we hunted them, you have to deal with smaller animals. Now, smaller animals can be quite large. They can be 200-300 kilos. So what about, I don't know, 700 pounds or so. But they run. And they're difficult to spot because they're smaller. And so you have to start chasing, you have to start tracking them, and you have to be more athletic to get them, and you have to develop other tools. So Homo sapiens is more athletic, you can say, than Homo erectus. And then you start to see some signs in biology that point to a somewhat increased level of plant consumption. And this is like about 80,000 years ago, there is a change in the FADS. I don't remember now what it stands for, but it's a gene that has to do with using omega-3 from plants and transferring to omega-3 that the body can use, EPA and DHA. You see that about 80,000, slight. The paper says a slight change. And when Homo sapiens arrived in Europe, by the way, he doesn't have this mutation. Actually, so it seems that in Europe, at the beginning anyway, and this is now, we are talking about Homo sapiens in Europe, we are talking about 45,000 years ago. At least at the beginning, he didn't need this mutation. So he still was using omega-3 or DHA and EPA from animals. Only very late, like really just before agriculture, you find this mutation appearing again in Homo sapiens. So this kind of evidence point, in my opinion, very strongly to that humans, and I'm talking about Homo erectus and Homo sapiens, were hypercarnivores. Homo erectus more hypercarnivore of large animals, very large animals, and Homo sapiens more smaller animals. Not that he didn't hunt large animals. In Europe, he hunted the elephants as well. But he had to hunt more smaller animals. Another very, very important point that paleoanthropologists ignore is energy. Now, according to studies of present hunter-gatherers, the return per hour in terms of calories on hunting medium-sized animal is about 30, 40, 50,000 calories per hour. The return on collecting and preparing is very important because it costs a lot of energy. Plants, the average, I did the average of about, I don't know, maybe 200 plants that in one source that I found. The average was 1,400 calories per hour. So it's like 1/20th. Okay, so I'm an economist. My BA is in economy. And I use this metaphor that if you go to the supermarket of nature, the cost of plants is about 20 times higher than the cost of animals. This is not the supermarket today. And people find it very difficult to grab and actually ignore it altogether. So it just cannot. I mean, people who used to, or Homo erectus, who used to be and evolved to become a carnivore, he just can't one day go and start collecting plants because he will not be able to survive to collect enough energy. So this is another point that is very, very important and get ignored by most researchers.
Mickey, and I've seen, you said there's, in that initial paper, there's like 25 sources of, 25 sources of data points that you're looking at. There's been some radioisotopic data. I'm sure you're aware of that. I think Michael Richards has done some of that work out of Max Planck University. One of the things, and you don't really mention, is the Neanderthal, which was also a prominent human species. And what is the relationship with because you focus on Homo erectus and the shift in towards Homo sapien? What did the Neanderthal, how did they adapt to where they came from? And did you get into much into their sort of history?
I tell you why I didn't emphasize Neanderthals. You see, the evidence that I have, most of it, comes from human biology. And human biology is Homo sapiens biology. So I am just not able, and by the way, there is not a real argument that Homo Neanderthal was not a carnivore. Fully fledged. I don't think anybody really object to that. Yes, he ate some plants here and there, but most researchers agree that Neanderthal was a carnivore. The problem that I wanted to, or the gap existed with Homo sapiens, not with the Neanderthal. And also, as I said, most of my source was like 15 of the 25 pieces of evidence were from biology and relied on human biology. So I have to limit myself to the lineage that led to Homo sapiens.
So based on, I know you've done some work out of the Levant, and there was a kind of a transitional species between perhaps Homo erectus and Homo sapien.
Right.
What was going on what was the demise of Homo erectus, and why did Homo sapien evolve? I mean, was this climate, was this species overhunting? What was going on? What was the transition like?
Okay, so now we're coming to ecology. And this is, like I said, it's missing from the discussion of human evolution. And the reason it's missing is because they just don't know. They just don't know. They face the research. I'm talking about researchers. They see, Homo erectus, and they see Homo sapiens, and they don't understand I don't think they know what is the ecological change that brought about this change, this evolution. And that's why it was so important for me to, here I refer to another paper that I published in October about the importance of large prey. The fact that humans were specialized large prey hunters explain everything. And the decline in large prey, the first time we noticed it was in 2011. That's why I'm saying that I'm working on it for already 10 years. And we noticed it in 2010. It was published in 2011. We noticed that in the Levant, elephant disappeared from archaeological sites 400,000 years ago. And there is a new species, a human species, that appear, and the Homo erectus is gone. This is because of the change in stone tools, and some teeth that were found. So, and we explained it in 2009 by the need to adapt once the elephants were gone. Need to adapt to hunt, let's say about 80 smaller deer instead of one elephant. And that was the 2011 paper, which most of the researchers managed to ignore. And in that paper already, we said that we think that in Africa, the appearance of Homo sapiens followed the same pattern. But we didn't have enough details, data about that. Now, what happens that recently, like in the last 2 years, there were quite a few papers, about 3, 4, 5 papers that were published about Africa, and showing that in Africa, there was the same prey decline, the size decline, that we saw in the Levant. And that one of them even said very cautiously, this is Richard Pott from the Smithsonian Institute. He said, this prey size decline is associated with the appearance of Homo sapiens and the appearance of a new culture, stone culture. And this is exactly what we said. And this appeared, by the way, happened 300,000 years ago, the appearance of Homo sapiens. In the Levant, the new species appeared 400,000 years ago, and the decline in prey size. So we started to have the data. Okay, he explained the appearance of Homo sapiens by the fact that he need to deal with the fluctuation in the availability of food because of a drying climate. By being a generalist, by being able, so smart that he can collect plants and animals. But we don't agree with that. we think that he dealt with it by adapting to hunt smaller animals. And of course, we have our reasons. I will not go into it now. But anyway, this is why we could start writing that second paper that actually it's a unifying theory that explains most of the key events in human evolution over 2 million years.
So Mickey, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm understanding is we're seeing maybe the first shift towards a Homo sapiens species 400,000 years ago in the Levant, which was then subsequently followed by the same sort of evolutionary pressures driving maybe basically a convergent evolution in Africa, maybe 300,000 years. Is there any evidence that the Levant guys migrated into Africa and we're just seeing the migration, or do you think it's just the same evolutionary pressure on a different species and we have, the same?
This is something that we can't tell. But I must say that also in Africa, between Homo erectus and Homo sapiens, there are other species. One very important one is Homo heidelbergensis, which, if we're talking brain volume, so Homo erectus started with 700 cc, but he evolved to have 900 cc and 1000 cc, yeah? Even I think 11, if I'm not mistaken, 1100 cc. Now, you must, of course, that there is a variability even today. We humans can have 1,000, 1,200, or 1,300, or 1,500 cc. So there is variability, and we don't have many samples. So we don't know, if we are catching a variability or we are catching a trend of increase. But heidelbergensis had 1,200 cc. So we see the trend already happening in Africa as well. So I don't know if the Levant situation is so unique. I don't think it is unique. But it is unique in terms of culture. So the culture of this species in the Levant 400,000 years ago is so advanced that actually, after it disappeared, it came back about 20, 30,000 years ago. So it's like, I'm talking about what they call blades, but it's knives. And you don't find it in Africa. You find it only in the Levant, a very advanced culture. So it means that the human, that probably, this is the interpretation, that human was very, very advanced also in terms of brain cognitive capabilities.
And for those that aren't familiar with the term Levant, that refers to basically kind of more of the Middle East region. That's, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
The Middle East is a bit larger than the Levant. Levant is basically Lebanon, Syria, and not all Syria, but the parts of Syria that are closer to Lebanon and Israel, a little bit of Jordan, and today they even annexed the Sinai Desert. So it's not a large area. The Middle East includes Iraq and very large areas that are not in the Levant. So, but let me talk a little bit about this, the second paper, the prey-size decline as a unifying ecological selecting agent.
Let me, just before you do that, Mickey, I want to just ask you, you talk about the rise of Homo sapien brain size, 700 cc's at the start, maybe 1,100 at the end. And then, humans peaked, our brain size has actually gone down in the last 100,000 years or so, something like that. But do you feel that Homo erectus was an efficient hunter to the point where they weren't, because we have this concept of lots of famine, humans were constantly dealing with famine. my sort of thought is, we probably were very good hunters. We had an adequate food supply, that we weren't dealing with famine enough, and therefore we could support brain growth. Is there any evidence that in your view, that would support that?
You just have to look at lions in Serengeti. And do they live in constant famine? Why would humans live in constant famine? That's it. It's no famine. Most of the time they were living quite well. The carnivores, they work like maybe, I don't know, 10% of the day or so. And then most of the time they just lie down. And humans were the same, must have been the same. No, you don't have to go far.
Okay, and that's what I thought. That's what I think, to support brain growth. You need a steady food supply, and so that makes sense. All right, you said you wanted to talk about the decline of prey size in the other paper, and I popped that up. Let me pull that back up again for people to look at. So, and here it is. Here, this is. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is a correct paper. Correct, making prey size decline.
That's the one. Yeah, that's
okay,
the one.
So let's talk about this some more if you want.
Right. That's the one. So this is, I think, it will take time probably to accept it. I just want to put it in context. The unifying explanations are very rare, because you need, it's not a big problem to raise a hypothesis for one phenomenon. You see a phenomenon, you say, it's the same time. You see another phenomenon, and you connect the two with some mechanism, and here's your explanation, okay? But to find one explanation for many phenomena as the same explanation is quite rare. Now, in science, hypotheses that can be attacked are the best. In other words, if I came to you and I said that I can explain all human evolution by intervention from space, okay? Now, this is, okay, maybe you can, but it's very difficult for me to check. So this hypothesis is useless in science. Nobody will actually deal with it. So you have to have an hypothesis that can be fought against. It can be, how should I say, denied or whatever. The people can actually test and say. Now, the good thing about a unifying hypothesis is that it's so large, it explains so much, that is really exposed to a lot of attacks. Okay, so I think it's the best hypothesis they can come up, because this is the most exposed hypothesis to attack. Now, the one that I came up with is actually started in my paper in 2011, whereby the declining prey size is the ecological driver of most of the adaptations, key adaptations that human made during prehistory. Because you need ecological driver to explain evolution. And here I'm talking not only about physical evolution, but about behavioral evolution and about material evolution. So it occurred to me, we started with a paper in 2011, and we explained the appearance of this new species in Kesem Cave in Israel by the decline or the disappearance of elephants. And then it occurred to me that you can actually explain many other things by that if you stick with energy. In other words, the mechanism is energy. And energy is the currency of life. And I'm an economist. An economist, I say, follow the money as an economist. Here, I say, follow the energy. So when large animals start to disappear, and this probably happened because we became so good at hunting them that we were just too good. And large animals, their fecundity is low. It takes about 15 years for elephants to become sexually mature. The gestation of elephant is 2 years. So it takes a long time for a new generation to appear. And if you take too many of them, they're just very sensitive to overhunting. And they start to disappear. Now, the net result is that you have to invest more energy in getting your food. And you have to, the first adjustment is by cognitive ability. Cognitive ability allows you to save energy. And how cognitive ability allows you to save energy? It allows you to track much better. I think we discussed it last time, to have much better tracking abilities of smaller animals. There are two types of tracking. You can track one spur at a time, or you can say, find a spur and say, okay, it seems to me like this animal is thirsty, and it will go to the lake. So you cut to the lake immediately. So for this, you need much higher cognitive, for this type of tracking, actually guessing what the animal will do, and then cutting to the it's called speculative tracking. Requires a lot of experience. Even today, let's say the sun, only the very experienced hunter do this type of tracking. So you need a lot of knowledge about the environment. You need a lot of you need to make very quick decisions. Yeah, and so you need a larger brain, not only for that. And then once you see the animal, she will run away. So you need like what they call projectile weapon. In other words, you need a weapon that will chase the animal, because you cannot chase the animal by running. So you need larger brain. So this explains the brain. Language. Now, a language again is another actually demand on the brain. Yeah, language demands a lot of brain capacity. And language allows you to exchange information about a lot of things that will save you energy. The need for language, this is one of the theories about language. Why do we need language in the first place? What makes language unique is that you can point to a place and a time that is remote. In other words, if you can point to a place, you can point to it. You don't need to say anything about it. If it's now, it's now. But if you want to say, I saw an elephant by the lake or some time ago, you need language. You cannot do it with gestures. Okay? So the need for language, and then in order to know so much about nature, you need to give names. Without names, sorry. Just a minute, this is like unbelievable. How about this started? Okay, got it was funny. I don't know how you started. Anyway, where were we? With the language. I don't remember where were
You
we.
said he needs to give something a name.
Mm, mm. You need to store. By the way, hunter-gatherers know about nature, unbelievable amount of knowledge. They know the names and the behavior of hundreds of little and larger animals and the trees and the plants, and they know so much about nature, but it's very difficult to transfer the knowledge without names. So you need to know, you need to have names. So names help you store energy and store knowledge and transfer knowledge. So that's another point where you can save energy by transferring knowledge. Most of the discussions of hunter-gatherers near the fire are about hunting. And they tell each other stories about how they hunted this and that and what they saw, this animal doing that. So language became very important once you had to track smaller animals. So this is one place where you can save energy. The other one, there are other places. For an instance, dog domestication. Okay, few months ago there was a paper by, I think it was, I'm not sure, somewhere north, some Scandinavian group, claiming that the dog was domesticated because humans had meat that they could supply the dog. And they had the meat because they cannot consume more than 30–40% protein. So they had extra meat, and this is correct. This is a lecture that I gave like 3 years ago in Rome, in a meeting. But again, this is not an evolutionary explanation because it doesn't have the ecology. Okay, it just have a mechanism. Yes, okay, but why it happened only about 20,000 years ago? Why dogs were not domesticated 200 years ago? I mean, Homo sapiens was smart already 300,000 years ago. Why they didn't domesticate it? And the reason they didn't domesticate it, because they didn't need it. When did they need it? When animals' size became smaller, they were more dependent on smaller animals, and they can save energy by giving the dogs the tracking and even the catching of the animal. And of course, smaller animals have more more meat and less fat. So they end up with a surplus meat that they cannot consume, because they cannot consume more than 40% of the meat of the animal in meat. And this animal is probably 60% in meat. So the 20% goes to the dogs. So this is how explanations need to have the ecological and the energetic side of it. There are two explanations for human large brain. One is sociality. This is researchers by the name of Dunbar. He said that the human brain expanded because the social scene became more complicated and they had to cope with it. He goes to primates, and he tried to show, he thought that he shows that primates, the more complicated, the larger the group, the larger the brain. So like a more complicated group, it's larger, so it's more complicated. in the end, other researchers found out that actually the size of the brain of primates is relative to the challenge of obtaining the food. So actually, I mean, this is exactly what we are talking about, right? The challenge of obtaining the food became harder or larger, so we needed a larger brain. And again, this type of explanation has no ecological driver behind it. So the question is, if you want to say that the brain became larger because you needed to be more sophisticated in your sociality, why did you need to become more sophisticated in sociality? So this is another one is this fire, the Wrangham explanation. Yeah, we needed it because we needed to control fire. Sure, why did we need to control fire all of a sudden? So these explanations lack the energetic and lack the ecological background behind it. And this is what we were able to do in this paper, is to bring these two, the ecological background, which is very simple. By the way, another very important phenomenon is this directionality. In other words, the human brain expanded over about 2 million years. So Homo habilis had 650 cc, and that was about 2.6 million years ago. Homo sapiens had about 1400 cc, 1500 cc, and that was 300,000 years ago. So it's 2.3 million years that the brain only went up in volume, never went down. And this is, in evolution, it is strange. It's not happening normally in evolution. What is the story with this directionality? It looks like we are meant by God to have a larger brain. But of course, this is not an explanation. So what we needed to come up with an explanation that will explain an ecological change that caused the same result time and again, time and again, time and again. And what we know, you mentioned it before, we know that the brain can actually shrink. And this is what happened 20, 30,000 years ago. All of a sudden, it began to shrink. Why? And you see it's together with the increase in plants. Because plants don't run away. You don't need to chase them. You don't need that much knowledge. You don't need to make quick decisions under pressure. So you don't need such a large brain. And the body doesn't keep something that costs a lot of energy, like a brain, if it doesn't need it. So this explanation explains also the directionality of, there's directionality also in stone tools, they become smaller. There's directionality in the intensive exploitation. So there is a directionality, very strange directionality in human evolution that this theory explains.
There's people, Miki, there's people that will say that, and they will readily admit that the human brain did indeed shrink, given over that, roughly with the time frame that you talk about 20,000 years ago, coinciding with, kind of the rise of agriculture. But many of them will say that, increased neuralization, encephalization, we're actually smarter. And I sort of think that, if I look at what it takes for me to survive as a human being today, all I need to know how to do is press a button and I can get food delivered to me. I don't have to think much. It's not very difficult to be a human these days. It doesn't require a lot of brain power. Do you think that the loss of brain size had a concomitant decrease in intelligence, or do you think it's we didn't lose any intelligence as we lost brain size?
I really don't know. It's not my business. It's not my area of expertise. But I, I'm just thinking to myself, it's very difficult to realize that we are more stupid than our predecessors. It's very difficult to live with that, with that notion. I don't think that we are more stupid because the life became more complicated. And by the way, today, our brain is much larger than that because our virtual brain, it became so large that really all the extensions, all these phones and all these computers, I mean, our brain is much larger than it used to be. Everything that I want to know, I don't have to remember the names. I just look at the phone. So we feel that we are very smart. We are smart because we have all these accessories. But if you put us in the middle of a savanna and try to run down a deer, okay, and do the tracking, you will see that it's not so simple.
Well, I mean, it's like saying I have good eyesight because I have glasses,
Yeah.
It's we're using these external things to do that. But going back to the dog thing, and I've seen the article saying that the paleo man couldn't survive his own diet or something. That was a headline that came from this sort of thing about feeding meat to the dogs. And what you're saying is because humans were eating leaner and leaner animals with less access to fat, we proportionally couldn't eat as much of the animal because it was a smaller animal has more protein than fat. What do you think and I know we've discussed this a little bit before, what do you think the protein concentration of the human diet was in this Homo erectus, early Homo sapien, Homo heidelbergensis time frame might have been?
Okay, yeah. I think was about 40%. And the reason I can give this kind of number is because I see how much effort and how much energy they invested in obtaining fat. So if they invested so much energy in obtaining fat, it means to me that they were on the limit of the protein consumption. Otherwise, they wouldn't need the fat that much. So for instance, it's very peculiar behavior of humans is to hunt prime adult animal. So these are the animals that are the most difficult to hunt. For instance, wolves mostly hunt the old and the young. Humans hunt the prime adults. And first of all, just giving up a whole age group is crazy for a carnivore because it's already increased their energetic costs. Yeah, because they walk in the wherever they walk and they see an animal and it's easy to hunt, but it doesn't have a lot of fat, so they forget about it. They just go to the next animal. They already lose an opportunity. They give up an opportunity. This has a lot of energetic cost to them. So you can see that humans, I forgot to say that actually prime adults have the higher amount of fat. At different times of the year, males and females have the higher amount of fat. For instance, male have, when they're preparing for the rat, they accumulate a lot of fat because during the rat they don't eat. And female accumulate fat for, when they become pregnant. So you see that they actually spend a lot of energy hunting fat, and they wouldn't have done that unless they were on the limit of the protein consumption. And this limit is about 35, 40%, some say 50%, it depends. But this is more or less the numbers.
And this is another, I guess, just a topic that it's not directly out of the paper, but a lot of people will argue that it's all nice and good that humans may or may not have eaten that way, but they only live for 25 years or 30 years. Yeah, I saw you laugh. Why do you laugh about that statement? So talk about what do we know about lifespan in humans?
If I get $1 for every time I heard this argument, I would be a millionaire. Well, there is this paper by Gurvan, and I think Kaplan also was there. And they did demographic studies of hunter-gatherers. And they found that hunter-gatherers live to a long, to very old age. Like I think 66% of them, okay. So the problem is that when you talk about average, you include a lot of babies that die at birth. And like the rate of death at birth of hunter-gatherer is about 200 times the rate in the United States. And this affects the average tremendously. So hunter-gatherers that live to be 15 years old, 66% of them become grandfathers and grandmothers. And the way they measure their age, the distribution of age is they use the model age of death. So at which age most people died. And when you talk, for instance, the Hadza, I think the model age of death is like 74. And other tribes are more or less the same, 70, 76, 74. So this is it. I mean, it's just a misconception completely about how long. Actually, you know that the chimpanzees in captivity live 3 times. The model age of chimpanzees in captivity is 45. And in nature, it's 15. So you would expect humans, when they become captive with all the doctors handling them, to be what, 210 or so, if they have to be 3 times. So captivity and domestication offers a lot of protection. And actually, we don't live that much longer than humans in nature.
Interesting. Miki, what do you have? Are you have another paper coming now, or what's the latest thing that you're doing now that you've got these 2 recent papers out?
I have another paper, but I wrote that's just waiting for it to be printed. It's in a book. But and another paper. What I do now, I haven't decided yet. I think I'm going to write a book about the theory that I have, because it's a theory that is dependent about on a lot of stuff that is very difficult to put in one paper. So I have actually I could do the book by just taking all the papers and put them in one book, but this is not the way to do it. So I'm going to write a book. What I'm still debating with myself is whether to make it a popular book or a scientific book. Probably I will first do the scientific one, collect all the facts in an organized manner, and then do the popular one. So it's like a 5 years project, the 2 books.
Good luck with that, Miki. Thank you today. This has been really enlightening as per usual. I continue it seems to make sense from what we're seeing, just even today with some of the evolutionary suppositions that we have. Miki, let us know where people can find out, get a hold of these papers, where they can find you, online, those types of things?
To get the papers, the ones that are not publicly available, I think the best place will be ResearchGate, and just send me a request. There is a possibility there to send the request for the paper. Most of them are publicly available, including the last spray size decline is publicly available. But ResearchGate is good. There's also my PhD thesis about the Neanderthal. Actually, the PhD was about the extinction of the Neanderthal. And again, the late quaternary megafauna extinction started about 50,000 years ago in Europe. And this is where when the Neanderthal began to disappear. So it's the same story. They could not adapt. Neanderthal are very stocky. They are shorter than us and way more than us. And so they had a hard time adjusting to hunt smaller animals. That's my theory, anyway. And at that time, humans were already there with technology and physiology that is more adapted to hunt smaller animals. So they took over. So the PhD is also there. So I think this is the best place to go, ResearchGate.
Okay, Mickey, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Look forward to hearing from you again down the road, and good luck to you, and take care. And I hope everybody gets to read your papers and look forward to the book.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, see you guys. Bye-bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Bye.